Welcome back to the Senior Hour. I'm Barbara Cochran with my co-host, Dr. Jean Dorio, on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. And we're speaking with Dr. Thomas Pilecki. I didn't say inimitable this time, did I? I'm slipping.
Did I lose some credibility in that first segment? I feel bad now.
Well, the inimitable.
There we go.
Dr. Thomas Pilecki, yes.
So we're talking about an individual, Dr. Peter Goitia. He's a researcher, independent researcher, co-founder of the Collaborative Collective. Over 31,000 independent researchers in over 120 countries that really just crunch numbers. They, as far as I can tell, they are not funded by any special interest group whatsoever. And they're just looking at what happens after the fact instead of what is projected if. Like a lot of these medications come to market, they do a very small trial and sometimes barely scientifically valid trial in order to get their product to market. And then even as the numbers are coming back, for many very dangerous products out there, the damages are ignored and even covered up on very high levels, which is real disturbing.
How about a crime?
It's criminal. Mm-hmm. It's criminal. He pulls no punches with this. He
Does
says,
he talk about that, really?
Oh yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah, just type in Peter Goitia, and you can come up with at least a dozen of his speeches in front of groups of doctors out there. He's not shy about any of this.
But a lot of this, I consider it white collar crime. But we look at the small time person, and they get put in jail, and our jails are filled with people. But what about the real crimes that are going on in our industry in the name of profit? I have a problem with that.
No, he's very, very adamant about it. He says that the pharmaceutical industries are based on the business model of organized crime, and they kill much more people than the mob ever did or could, and they're totally legitimized. So he is on a crusade about this stuff. And sometimes you do wonder, like, what is his agenda? And the only thing that I can see is that he's passionate about trying to save lives. Mm-hmm.
So you had a few other things there were.
Yeah, he gave his top five list. Again, his whole thing started with his investigation into psychiatric medicine. And again, I have very close family members who were prominent psychiatrists, and it's not good. Psychiatric medicine has very little scientific validity whatsoever. The things that they claim to be treating are often caused by the medications that they prescribe for them. And in very short terms, it may be necessary and it may have really good results. And we're talking in a matter of weeks to even as much as months. But the returns diminish dramatically anything past a 3-month period. So any kind of prolonged treatment with these medications, and many people are on treatment for the rest of their lives, simply because it is now a chemical dependency. You take it away after the first 3 months, and you've created a chemical dependency, and you can send someone right over the edge.
Mm-hmm. Through withdrawal in some way.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So he found that the antidepressants, short-term only, antipsychotics, even in life and death situations, short-term only, anything past a 2 to 3 month range is absolutely counterproductive. And anti-dementia drugs are put into that category as well. There is no scientific validity for any long-term use of anti-dementia drugs.
And the models, I've read the papers, and I'm not with Cochran Collaboratives, but I've read the papers, and I'm a scientist. I mean, I have degrees other than an MD in science where I had to write studies up and look at papers and learn how to analyze. And there are just some things out there that are, abhorrent that have been prescribed now for people with dementia that, they cost a lot of money and they're one of the highest selling brands that are out there.
Sure.
But are they really that effective? And to really see an individual go on it and measure that it's being effective is almost impossible because everybody has different degrees of diminishing memory. I hope for all of us, it's a real slow downgrade in life for us.
Sure.
But there are some people that are just a lot faster, and sometimes it is environmental, sometimes it's just
There's
genetic.
a lot to it. There's always more to it than just here, take this pill, and that's going to be the answer to all of it.
But they don't measure that it's being effective. No doctor does. You can go to a neurologist. Yeah, you can go to a neurologist. You can go to a psychiatrist. But are they doing the appropriate testing to say, it arrested it a little bit? And of course, they'll always say that it's not supposed to get you better. Right. It's just supposed to slow you down.
Well,
I think in 25 years they'll look back and maybe even extract this show and say, hey, these guys are saying on the senior hour that it's a con game.
Yeah, it really is. So any protocol that I administer in my office, we do outcome assessment prior to, during, and if it is appropriate to discharge the patient as an exit exam. In fact, if you are practicing and taking money from the Medicare system, that is absolutely required at this time, that you are doing outcome assessments, that you are actually measuring the results that you're getting. And I have to say that some of the outcome assessments, as far as I'm concerned, are pretty weak. Mm-hmm. But they tend to, as long as you have some improvement in some area that is quantified and measurable, and one of the big ones is, how do you feel? How do you feel? Boy, that's weak as far as I'm concerned, but that is
especially if they have a memory problem and they can't remember that they feel better or worse.
So I actually like a little bit more the current standard that they're using in concussion work. Mm-hmm. Because it is a series of questions that sees how the brain is really working, and then you use that as a benchmark, and then you check back. You give them the same test months into treatment, and test them again months into treatment, and see how they're answering, and see, is the brain still operating at the same level? Because they're doing this now with the new Super Bowl, on the last Super Bowl, that you saw the attention they were paying to these potential concussion injuries, and said they're being evaluated on the field, they're being evaluated back in the locker room, and they're being evaluated preseason, midseason, postseason now, because it was exposed. The NFL didn't embrace this. They were like, no, this isn't real, it can't be happening, yada, yada, yada. And then it was exposed, and they were like, okay, we have to pay attention to this now. And I believe that's what it's going to take in every subspecialty of medicine, that these things need to be exposed, that people need to know, that people are aware going into it that there are big problems in the way things are done now, and it is rarely, if ever, the most appropriate. I'm not saying the most expedient. Of course it's the most expedient. That's why it's there. But it is rarely the most appropriate response to say, here, just take this pill.
That's all that's happening now, though. Take the pill and don't measure the outcome.
Yeah.
Don't make an assessment.
Well, that's what the Cochran Collaborative
The only thing,
does.
The big problem also as a medical doctor, you're looking for side effects. I am afraid that how they've done these studies, that they do them, and you've seen the episodes on television that the media has showed us, that the appropriate validation of these medications doesn't work. That some people are, because they're getting paid to be on these studies, like $50 in a third world nation, they might be on 5 different studies all at one time.
Absolutely. I think anybody who sees a commercial at all or sees an ad at all needs to go past the pretty pictures and go right to the disclaimer, because the disclaimer is the only shred of truth in any of that, where it's, this may cause lymphoma and cancer, and you can't leave the country, certain fungal infections, certain life and death, increases the risk of suicidal thoughts, tendencies, or actions. And that's what you really need to pay attention to, and forget everything else about the commercial.
Absolutely. And that is happening more often now than it ever used to, ever. Because you very seldom ever heard these possible side effects. It's always seeing this happy-go-lucky people
with sweet, good music.
Oh, I feel great because I took this.
Yeah. But by the way, it could cause nausea, vomiting, headache, dizziness, chest pain, shortness of breath, abdominal pain, diarrhea.
At the end, ask your doctor if this is right for you. I'm like,
what?
Yeah. I'm not sure. Is lymphoma right for me, doctor? Well, yeah, sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Here, no, it wasn't right for me.
There you go.
And I'm so convinced that methotrexate was, because I took it once a week.
Okay, so here's
once a week.
Here's
just
a big
6 years.
Yeah, there you go. Here's a big shocker. Don't need a prescription for this. It makes the top 5. Non-steroidal anti-inflammatories. Pretty much any form of anti-inflammatory, pain reliever, painkiller that you can get over the counter in any aisle of any supermarket or drugstore or anything. Bad stuff, real bad stuff, responsible for at least 18,000 hospital admissions every single year, minimally. These are the ones that are reported, not the ones that are repurposed later on, which happens a lot. But these are the ones that are reported, and 8,000 deaths per year just on this over-the-counter anti-inflammatory meds that we all never even think twice of. Just take it, if anybody has a problem in any office setting, immediately it's, what's in your purse? What can, here, just take this or whatever. Do you have a, fill in the blank? And they all have their problems. Aspirin tears up the stomach, naproxen, kidneys, acetaminophen, liver, ibuprofen, shuts down the intestinal and causes ulcerations. I mean, it's all there. They all do something horrible.
Oh, my stomach hurts now.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, and the FDA had to reverse their stand on daily aspirin is good for you. It's not. It's not good for you in any shape or fashion. It's not good for you, and the correlation is really weak that it does anything to prevent a heart attack or a stroke or any of that.
Interesting, because that's what they say.
Yeah, I know.
Of
course, they say that, but the real numbers show that there is no real good validity to these claims. In fact, there are good scientifically valid studies out there that show that these products actually increase frequency and severity of the things that they're supposed to be. Headaches are more frequent and more severe if you take aspirin regularly for them, or any combination of aspirin, caffeine, and acetaminophen. It's the most common headache formula out there. Increases frequency and severity of headaches over the long term.
Well, I would think a glass of red wine would be better for you than aspirin.
Not necessarily. Not necessarily.
But that's.
But there's a balance.
They also say that.
There's a balance. I think and I believe in a baby aspirin a day. If you have the right balance, if you are exercising, if you are eating correctly, if you're keeping your mental mobility and enhance your how you think, if you do all those things in combination, I think it could play some role in the long run by slightly thinning the blood.
There's a possibility of that, and I totally respect that. But I don't like the euphemism of thinning the blood. what really happens is you're poisoning platelet function. That's that's what it does. Poisoning platelet function is the reality, and the sugar coating on it is thinning the blood.
The thought is that in the coronary artery, you have thrombosis, which is predicated on platelet dysfunction, and the clogging of the vessel itself. All of a sudden, this thrombus ruptures, and you have a heart attack. So that's the basis of it, and that's why, in theory, they like serotonin enhancers. Oh, here's our theory, and this is what we think is going on. And I think there's some of the theory that may have been, well evidence-based, but, I don't think it applies to everybody. And I think there are some people that will overexpose themselves with taking a baby aspirin a day to other problems.
Sure.
So, who are those people that we choose? I don't know. I don't think we have the answer. I still say, instead of relying on medication, rely on the common sense of life that says you better eat right, you better watch your weight, you better exercise, and you better, have good relations around you to stay mentally fit. And when you do all those things, that's the balance of life. And the seniors who are that I see living longer, that's what they're doing. And I'm kind of proud that I get to see them doing all these things to keep that balance that are making them live longer and having the quality of life that we all want to have.
Absolutely. I see it the same thing in my patients. My patient, if they're coming to me, they're more open to lifestyle than the average patient that you're going to see. So I have a huge advantage of that my patients are already pre-qualified, because they're not going to go to a chiropractor if they think that everything can be answered with a pill. They're just not going to do that. So we see that, and a lot of good, solid research is coming out now that any long-term chronic health issue can have a link to a musculoskeletal component, a neurological component. An old injury that was never rehabilitated properly can come back to haunt you in any number of different ways. And that's what we address. We try to get the tension, the stress out, the internal stress out of the way that the body works, and open up the resources for it to do what it naturally wants to do and be healthy and function on as high a level as possible at any age. The last medication that made his list was incontinence medication. It says there's no scientific validity to it whatsoever. It just doesn't seem to do anything. And that's a little scary. We have seen some results, and again, I don't claim to treat incontinence, but when there is a neurological component, which there often is, people do tend to respond. In fact, there's several anecdotal and some loose correlation that this is a valid treatment. Chiropractic is a valid treatment for incontinence. I don't make those claims.
Well, who does?
Like I said, there's anecdotal. As a scientist, as someone who claims to be evidence-based, I'm not going to say that, if you have this problem, come see me and I'll fix it. I'll say some people do respond under certain circumstances. If there is a direct correlation that your problem is caused by this, you've got the best possible chance of responding to care. And I do the best to pick the right patients, because nobody doesn't want a response. Nobody doesn't want to come in and waste their time getting some kind of treatment that months or even years later you ask them, well, how's that working for you? And you go, I think it's helping. I'm not looking for that response from my patients. If you see some of my reviews online, some of my testimonials, it's all about, this is amazing. And that doesn't happen by chance. It's because I don't accept everybody. I got to make sure that, is this really happening with you? Is there something that I can do about it? And if that is the case, then we're in good shape to move forward. The last thing, all right, this is where the big feathers are going to be ruffled. And this has been, I put this out there nearly 5 years ago, and you should have seen some of the responses I got on this. Disturbing. So I'm just putting this out there. I no longer have an opinion about this. I leave this up to the researchers. Mammography is on the top of his list as far as medical screenings. And the research is out there that supports that not only is it not a good indicator, it is not a good life extender. It actually is the exact opposite. It makes healthy people sick because of constant, the breast tissue is radiosensitive, and when you compress it and radiate it with the type of radiation used in mammography screening, you are absolutely doing the worst possible thing to breast tissue that you can, and doing it repeatedly over time is a formula for disaster. Secondly, when it shows a lot of false positives and a lot of false negatives, so it's not a real sensitive or specific test out there. And the false positives are what is the worst part of it, because it subjects potentially healthy people who have maybe a non-aggressive form of cancer to very serious radioactive treatment, chemotherapy treatments that actually absolutely compromise the quality of health, and it may potentially wind up killing the patient. This is not my opinion. This is not some chiropractor who doesn't know anything saying that, how dare they go after the golden goose of mammography. I have no professional opinion on this whatsoever. I am just stating the facts of the collaborative.
Okay, you mentioned mammography. What about MRIs?
MRIs are completely different. It's not it's not ionizing radiation. I believe, this is my belief, I cannot support it with scientific evidence, that there is potential risk with MRI. There is real good scientific evidence that MRI with contrast is really potentially dangerous.
For neurologic type problems.
Everything. Yeah. You stick radioactive dye in somebody and you can't imagine that there's not going to be some kind of consequence.
Has the Cochran Collaborative talked about that at all?
Well, I'm pretty sure. I haven't researched it. Like I was saying, I'm just saying that I have an opinion about this, and I have not done the due diligence to look up.
So there are at least 3 different organizations in the United States that does research and has come out from American Cancer Society to radiology groups and things like that has talked about what age one gets a mammography done. And, when they said that you don't have to have it till you're 60 or 50, right now the standard is 40. Who came out against that? Women came out against it because anecdotally, many of them, if they didn't have a mammogram, they'd be dead. Their cancer would have blown up and killed them in the long run. So a lot of women are saying the reason why that right now we're hearing a lot of this so-called research saying 50 or 60 years old start your screening is because the insurance companies don't want to pay for it because so many are being done and blah, 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 blah. So you're getting the counter side of this, people saying there's secondary gain for insurance companies to not do it on women. And women groups, rightfully, I think, have said, we're not putting up with this.
I am all for breast cancer screening. Absolutely. Find it, deal with it, do whatever necessary to avoid it. I'm just saying that mammography is probably not, and according to the Cochran Collaborative, not the great diagnostic tool that it is put forth as. Absolutely, breast cancer screenings, you should start as soon as there is breast tissue to examine. You don't wait until you're 40 or 50 or 60 or whenever to have regular breast cancer screenings. It's just that this technology is what's in question, and there is good scientific evidence to say that this is not a great technology to use in breast cancer screening.
So one day when we have better technology, we should use that.
Absolutely.
But if we go to the Cochran Collaborative, we should be able to find that point that you're talking about right now.
Yeah.
So it's all interesting information, I think, that we're getting. And I think we need second opinions across the board. Anybody who tells you need to take this medication, you need to have these tests, and you need to have the surgery, you can go online. That's a good place to start off. But, if you're really worried about it, then the thing to do then after that is to get that second opinion from a doctor in a different group, in a different area, at a different medical school or whatever it is, to substantiate your what you think is the best information that you can get at that time.
Sure.
Because it's hard to do because there's so much bias going on.
There's so much bias. There's so much information and so much misinformation out there that unless you have a research background like you do, it can be absolutely overwhelming. You type in any one of these hot phrases into a search engine, and you will get tens, if not hundreds of thousands of responses. And how are you going to sort through that? And especially if it is not necessarily user-friendly, or if it is overly user-friendly, it usually comes with an agenda.
Yeah.
So
that's the sad part. I just hate this part where you have to dissect through and filter all these things to figure out, even as a physician, what is really going to work for our patients and what is not going to work. And to have the repertoire of information that we need to have to give to our patients, it's almost impossible. But like I say, I have my cell phone and I put things in and I look it up and try to get the best information at the time as my patients do.
Well, I'm not going to have another mammogram. At my age, why do I need to?
Well,
I
would say that I would support you in not getting a mammogram. I would not support you in saying that at your age, why should you do a regular breast cancer screening? Unfortunately, just like many things in conventional medicine these days, as it's practiced in America, you really have only one choice, and that is a mammogram, which the research does not necessarily support, is all that I'm saying. I'm not saying, oh, women, don't do any breast cancer screening. That is not what I'm saying here. I'm just saying that mammograms, which is the kind of the only option you have, is not a great technology.
Always controversial, Dr. Thomas Palecki. How can people get a hold of you if they need to?
The phone number is 661-753-9340. You can qualify for a complimentary consultation online at drpolucki.com, drpalecki.com.
Appreciate your being on the show.
Thank you.
It's always fun and interesting, and I think more than anything else for our seniors, it's educational.
I try.
Thanks for being on the show again. We're
you.
Sponsored by Advanced Audiology and SCV in Home Care. Listen to us next week on the Senior Hour. Now go and enhance your quality of life.